Again, welcome to this segment of the APL Instructional Strategies video session. And the question that I would like to address in this short segment has to do with youngster behavior management. And of course, that's a concern that all teachers bring to our workshops, it seems. They have individual stories and they have classroom stories and collective stories and so on about youngster behavior that they find to be unacceptable. And of course, what they want from us is they want us to give them some strategies or at least a process or plan by which they can work on these kinds of things. This is particularly true when we work with undergraduates because one of the major concerns is can I actually run a classroom as regards managing youngster behavior. They're comfortable with the content that they teach. They come to it comfortable with that. But they're very antsy about this whole behavior management process. So what I'd like to do in this segment is I'd like to quickly again review with you, and it's going to be a quick review of the whole process that we spent some time on in the workshop dealing with youngster behavior management. To start that process out, what I'd like to do is to quickly outline or list for you the 6 behavior management guidelines. Right? Now, these are items that you probably remember from the workshop, but if not, these may be new pieces of information for you. There are 6 of them. The number 1 guideline is assume nothing. And I think once we get careless and we begin to make assumptions about what youngsters can or cannot do or are willing to do, immediately we end up having to deal with issues. So assume nothing to start with. Second guideline, set your limits, stand your ground. Now, quite simply, and I think it's obvious, logical, that making sure you understand what your limits are and communicating these to the youngsters in a clear way. Now, I guess a word that I should add with that one is reasonable limits. Be cautious now. Don't be setting unrealistic limits on youngsters in your classroom. But the long and short of it is standing your ground. The third guideline is it's not personal. Oftentimes we get angry as we start dealing with behaviors that kids exhibit that we find unacceptable. But the truth of the matter is it isn't personal. Although it sometimes is perceived as that, it isn't. Therefore, I need to control it. There's no question about the fact that you may be upset. However, our message here is just don't let them see it, okay? What we're modeling here is a little self-control here. And of course, we as adults who interact with kids on a daily basis need to model that. So the first 3 now that I've given you, think about those first 3 for a second, right? Number 1, key, assume nothing. Number 2, set your limits, stand your ground now. Number 3, it's not personal. Okay, so you have those 3 in place. Let's go to item number 4. Item number 4 is tightly tied to item number 3, and that is make sure that you never attack the kid, but rather attack the behavior. It's not the kid, it's the kid's behavior that we're dealing with. And it's a very slippery slope on this one, where we can slide ourselves into attacking the youngster, when in fact we need to keep our focus on the behavior, not the youngster. Fourth now, get out of the warning systems. In many instances, we've built pretty sophisticated warning systems for youngsters regarding their behavior. Well, we know that warnings can get out of hand, and when we do that, what we're really communicating is we're not serious about what we're asking youngsters to do based on what our expectations are. And then finally, the last one, and it's one that can be seriously problematic, and that is no mass punishment. No mass punishing here. Now, there's a lot of reasons why that's the way it should be. A couple prominent reasons is, number 1, it's unfair to begin with. Some youngsters did nothing wrong. In the process of punishing them along with everybody else, I destroyed the relationship I had with that youngster. I had a pretty good relationship with that youngster until I punished them for something they didn't do. Now we have not only the original problem, but we have multiple problems that go along with it. So making sure that we don't try to get at unacceptable behavior through the mass punishment process. The other piece that goes along with that mass punishment piece is, if you think about it, mass punishment is a bullying training system. The logic behind it is peer pressure. So our recommendation is, and I think you would find that true across the board, is never unleash kids on kids. Once that happens, the process gets so far out of control that you cannot even begin to institute damage control on this one. So we have 6 behavior management guidelines that I wanted to reinforce or remind you of that we've dealt with previously. We have the first 3, which I just reviewed. The last 3, one of which is make sure you attack the behavior, not the youngster. 2, get out of unnecessary warning systems. And 3, no mass punishment. So having said that now, that sets the groundwork now for what I want to deal with next. And what I want to deal with next is a process or a plan that I need to have in place when I start thinking about the overall behavior management in my class. Now, when you talk that way, in most interview sessions with prospective employees, one of the key questions oftentimes is, when youngsters are acting in unacceptable ways, how do you plan to manage it? Well, the answer, quite honestly and effectively, should be proactive. I'm going to act on the problem before the problem becomes a problem. That's being proactive in this instance. So therefore, the teaching a behavior process, which I'm going to quickly review with you now, is a step in the direction of being proactive here. Now, there are 5 steps in the teaching behavior process, or the teaching behavior plan. Step 1 of which is take a look at whatever the behavior is: lining up, cafeteria, how to hand in papers, how to enter and exit the classroom, how to interact in groups, how to come prepared to class, whatever. And take that individual behavior and brainstorm all of the essential pieces of information that a youngster needs to know about that in order to be able to do it effectively and successfully in your classroom. For example, does every youngster at the secondary level know what it means when you say come prepared to class? Well, I need to share with them every piece of information under step number 1 that they need to know in order to be able to effectively do that. I cannot assume that they understand what that means when I say it. On the elementary level, do the youngsters know all the information they need to know about how to line up correctly in this classroom to do anything, as we use the lining up to do? So therefore, the first step is to sit down, take a look at the behavior you're after, and brainstorm all the essential parts. Second step, no surprise here, you model it. Well, why? The youngsters need to see what you just said looks like. The words themselves are not going to do it. Just by describing that to youngsters isn't an effective approach. And we know that. Why? Because we also know that youngsters only pick up roughly 10 to 20% of what they hear. So that being the case, I can't cut it off at step number 1 by just giving them the information I think they need to have. It needs to go to the next step, which is the modeling piece. They need to actually see it. When they see it, it increases their understanding of what I want by an additional 35 to 45%. Now, if you add those 2 figures together, I now have them clearly understanding what I want at the 45 to 65% level. We're not there yet. We're not there, but we've made a major step in the right direction. What have we done? We've given them all the information they need to know about the behavior, in other words, how to do it correctly. 2, I've actually shown them, the teacher, the adults in this case, have actually shown them what it looks like. When I taught cafeteria, I gave them all the information they needed, then and a few teachers, then we showed them what that needed to look like. Step number 3, and no surprise here, they need to practice it now. Now they need to get their hands around it and give it a try. If it's coming prepared to class, let's get out of your seats, go out in the hall, and show me what it needs to look like when you walk into class prepared. If it's lining up, let's give lining up a try now. I taught you I gave you all the information you needed. I showed you what it looks like. Now let me see if you can actually give to me what I just taught. So that practice piece is critical for a number of reasons. One, it reinforces the right stuff. In other words, a set of repetitions to get at that procedure. And secondly now, it gives you an idea if they can do it the way it needs to be done. Step number 4 now. Once you've given them the practice session and you like what you see, then you positively reinforce it. Thank them for their effort. Thank them for doing it. Point out the things that you saw that you like. Tell them that they did a great job, and that's what you would expect to see on a daily basis. Now, as part of the reinforcement now, I'd like to have you think back to another video segment that we built into this process, which had to do with reinforcement. And you might want to go back and take a look at that. You may want to go back and take a look at that segment, that video segment on reinforcement, because it's going to outline for you in there how the reinforcement process should work versus how sometimes the reinforcement process does work. So you may want to go back and check that particular video. But it'll give you a more in-depth look at reinforcement beyond what I just said, which was you've got to positively feed back to them what you saw regarding the practice session. And then finally, step number 5, or the last step in the process is, how do I respond when a youngster is not able to give me what I want or does not willingly give me what I want on the behavior side? In other words, they didn't come to class prepared, or they did something in class that we now know is inappropriate, and therefore I need to address it. That's step number 5. And step number 5 is the reteaching step. We oftentimes refer to it as the reteaching step. Oftentimes I refer to it as the retraining step, which is not unlike an employee in a business who cannot do what we need to have them do, so we take them through a retraining process so that they can be successful. Well, the same is true here with a student. So we'll take them through a retraining process which has 3 components to it. Component A, on their value time, or as close as I can get to that value time. 2, only the time necessary to retrain on that particular behavior. Don't overdo it, because in some instances it's easy to kind of slide over into overdoing it. And when that happens, keep in mind now, I'm attacking the kid, I'm not attacking the behavior here. And in the final step, or the final piece under the retraining piece, is as often as necessary until the youngster has picked up on the behavior and how it needs to be done in an acceptable fashion. So what we have done here in this segment is we've covered 2 basic blocks of information. Block of information A, in this case, the 6 behavior management guidelines. They're good guidelines for us to keep in the back of our mind as we interact with youngsters in a classroom. Secondly, what is the plan, or what is the process that I'm going to take youngsters through so that they can more successfully do what I feel that they should be able to do in my classroom to be successful. This was, as I indicated now, this is a quick review. It's not an in-depth review. It's something that we spend a good deal of time on in the workshop session, and this is by way of refreshing you on the approaches or the thoughts that you need to keep in mind as you work on youngster behavior.